Our speaker tonight is Andrew Kite, and he will be talking on Rio Tinto's iron ore operations and future developments. Andrew is the Chief Development Officer, Pilbara, for Rio Tinto Iron Ore for 27 years in the mining industry. He presently leads the resource development, business development and strategic planning teams within Pilbara Operations Iron Ore. Andrew is a member of the AusIMM, having joined as a student. He graduated with a Bachelor of Mining Engineering First Class and University Medal from Sydney University in 1984, and later gained an MBA from the Australian Graduate School of Management. He commenced his career working underground and open-cut coal mines in the Hunter Valley, New South Wales, before working in more senior roles in Indonesia, the UK, and now Western Australia. So could you please put your hands together to welcome Andrew.
Thank you, Ivor, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I was just reflecting on the way in here that the first time I had the opportunity to talk to an AusIMM branch meeting was as a student, and that's nearly 30 years ago. It doesn't get any easier. So I have a few slides I'd just like to talk to today, principally around what we are calling Australia's largest integrated mining project, the expansion of our businesses to 333 million tonnes per annum. So my slides will take about half an hour, I guess, and then I'd like to open up for any questions. So, to start with, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we meet on, the Noongar people, and then, and most appropriately, to start with safety. Safety is our number one priority, and we call it a core business value. Our relentless pursuit of a safe workplace has resulted in significant inroads made to reduce injury rates over the last decade, but there is clearly more to do. Our goals of zero injuries and zero fatalities can only be achieved if every employee, contractor and visitor does their share to recognise, avoid and mitigate risks. Regrettably, we've had 2 fatalities in our business this year, one in IOC earlier this year, and last month we had a fatality at East Intercourse Island Port in June. We do learn from such accidents, and we never want them to happen again. The consequences are terrible as it affects employees, families and other direct workmates, and ripple through the workplace and the broader community. And I can't but stress those broader implications, and we're seeing that given there's now been another fatality at the ports at BHP and a serious injury at the FMG port facilities over the weekend. Our challenge remains to continually educate our people, new and existing, as we embark on this exciting growth phase. And as our Chief Executive said when he was out here about 2 weeks ago, our mandate to grow will be compromised if we can't improve our safety performance. So it remains a core value to us. Looking at where our business is at the moment, we're currently operating at about 225 million tonnes per annum, and you can see the steady increase in production that we've achieved over the last, in this case, 6 years, and also clearly demonstrating the earnings that the business has been able to generate, which exceeded $10 billion US in 2010. Let me turn to the market for just a sec. I've got a couple of slides just to remind ourselves of where all this product is going and the opportunity that China presents to us. This chart is a steel intensity curve which shows on the y-axis the number of kilograms of steel consumed per head, and on the x-axis the real GDPs across different countries. And you can see there's a steel intensity curve that's commonly drawn that as GDP increases, the amount of steel per head of the population increases. And you can see that the large population centres of the world, China, have been part way up the ramp-up curve. You can see sitting around about 400 to 500 kilograms per head. And India, sitting much lower down the steel intensity curve, still sitting below 100 kilograms per head. So the long-term fundamentals of the steel industry remain very positive, with growth fundamentals unchanged, underpinned by urbanisation and income growth in the developing world, particularly China. The key drivers over the next decade in China are building an infrastructure demand with manufacturing and consumer-led demand beyond that. It's important to remember that there's still much potential in China, and China is not one homogeneous mass, and I'll cover that in the following slide. And there remains further potential beyond China in India, Southeast Asian nations such as Indonesia and Vietnam. And turning then to having a bit more of a deep dive into China, this chart shows the steel intensity, again on the y-axis, and the GDP on the x-axis, but looks at the different provinces in China. From Shanghai, where we've reached steel intensities of over 1,000 kilograms per head, through the vast bulk of the Midwest and then eastern provinces, which still have lots of potential to increase their steel intensity. It really is the development of these large population centres away from the coast that will underpin iron ore demand over the coming decade. So, faced with that market demand, what does supply look like? Well, this chart shows the global iron ore supply and export additions per year in 3 phases. From 2003 to 6, we were adding about 100 million tonnes per annum to global exports. From 2007 to 10, with the GFC interrupting, that fell to round about 80 million tonnes per annum of additional supply into the industry. As we look forward, we anticipate that we're going to need, there'll be in the order of, 100 million tonnes per annum coming in, and Rio Tinto anticipates supplying about 25% of that growth in the export markets. Our proven project delivery model ensures we continue to successfully respond to demand. So there is huge scope for further global growth. And this chart sets out our expansion plans at the very highest level, and I'll go into these in much more detail in the main part of my presentation. We're currently operating at about 225 million tonnes per annum from the Pilbara and 18 million tonnes per annum capacity from IOC in Canada. We've announced expansion plans for an additional 58 million tonnes out of our Pilbara operations exported through Cape Lambert, and IOC is currently constructing an additional 5 million tonnes of capacity. We've got further expansions to lift the Pilbara to 333 million tonnes per annum, and then bringing Simandou in Guinea online, initially at 95 million tonnes per annum, and an additional expansion at IOC that will lift overall production to around about 450 million tonnes per annum by 2015. There's further potential, given the size of our resources and the market opportunity, to further expand up to and probably in excess of 650 million tonnes per annum by the end of this decade. Now I'd like to focus in on the Pilbara expansions that we have underway. Many of you have had the opportunity to work in our iron ore businesses over many periods of time, and so Tom Price will be celebrating 50 years shortly in production, followed by Paradou, and there was a very long period where production was sitting around about 40 million tonnes per annum. The North acquisition in 2000 brought West Angeles and Cape Lambert port rail system into our business, and following the Chinese-led demand growth, we've rapidly expanded our business, bringing online a number of new mines over the last 5 years. And as the chart shows, the dotted line, we've got effectively a new mine to bring on every year over the next 6 or 7 years if we're to achieve our 333 growth plans. So, as I said, starting with the mineral assets that underpin our decade-long expansion, we've got about 3 billion tonnes of reserves and 17 billion tonnes of resources sitting around a much larger mineralised inventory. To understand the size of the resource that we have, and going forward, we have a very extensive resource development exploration program in place. The small bar graph on the right-hand side of the chart just outlines this year we're doing 620,000 metres of near mine site drilling. It's a combination of RC rigs, diamond drill rigs, hydro drilling, geotech drilling. And that we're looking to expand that towards 700 kilometres, 700,000 metres of drilling in 2014 before, I guess, we feel that the program will be ramping down. In the event that our expansions continue beyond 333 million tonnes per annum, then that there won't be any turn down in our resource development. We'll be continuing at least 650 to 700,000 metres of drilling per annum through really to the end of the decade. So we've got a program in place to spend over $1 billion Australian on this resource enhancement program going forward. So it truly is an enormous program. Get a sense of the scale. We'll have 35 drill rigs operating in the Pilbara by November. There's 26 up there at the moment. We'll have 35 in place by November, and before we scale down over the wet season. And I guess armed with all that information, we do a lot of work thinking about what are the optimal expansion pathways for our business. We have 17 billion tonnes of resources. We currently have 15 mines and mines coming on each year. We have 3 ports and a variety of different expansion options for those ports. So it is not a linear process to think about how do we expand our business from 220 to 330 and beyond. And in fact, we have a very sophisticated strategic production planning process, we call it the SPP system, that runs scenarios throughout the deposits, putting in different constraints around type of beneficiation, dry screening, wet screening, concentration plant, scale of our business, location, infrastructure costs, port development costs. We run these scenarios to try and work out what are the optimum pathways for developing our business.